Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto Betrayed by the Village and Joined Assassin Brotherhood. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. All wasting no time. Let's start the story.
In the main water country den, Washi and Yugito entered a very special room that housed the transportation device known as the gateway. As they entered, they saw that their mentor Raven was double checking his seals, which were necessary to operate the gateway properly and to repower the system when it restarted. With an inquisitive tone, Washi approaches him and says, "It looks exactly like the one back in the Spring Country Den, but I thought you said you had to reactivate it on both sides within a day or we would have to wait another week to even attempt to reopen it once more, mentor." After grinning at his young pupil, Raven remarked, "You are forgetting, my young apprentice, that we are of the Uzumaki clan. And I heard quite a few times that we were capable of the impossible." Washi and Yugito noticed an eagle the size of a small pit bull standing in the room at this point. The eagle had armor on its chest, but it still allowed the graceful raptor to soar through the skies when necessary. Raven simply nodded his head at the eagle, which vanished in a puff of smoke while carrying an odd-looking scroll in one of its talons that Washi recognized right away as a storage scroll. With his arms folded across his chest, Raven positioned himself well away from the gateway's front and said, "If everything went as planned, all we have to do is wait and just give it a moment." Yugito had to ask him, "Wait for what, mentor?" because she was unable to control her curiosity. At this precise moment, an exact replica of Raven himself emerged from the gateway, bound to them, and vanished in a cloud of smoke. However, before he could say anything to her, the gateway came to life in a brilliant flash of light, sending bright rays of light into the room, illuminating it more than before. "I had one of the Eagle clan send a scroll with a shadow clone sealed inside it to the Spring Den so that the gateway there could be reactivated from that side, as I had already prepared this side beforehand. But we now have a link to the Den there and its archives, as well as the weapons hidden there that will assist us in the coming months," Raven said to his two older students after the gateway appeared to shut off and then regain some life. Raven could see that both of his apprentices were impressed by the gateway and its capabilities. At this point, he saw Yugito looking curiously at the gateway's distinctive design and asked her what was so fascinating about it. "What, pray tell, on you so fixated on my young apprentice?" he asked. She asked him, "What are those up there indicating, mentor?" Raven was taken aback by what he saw when he looked up at the gateway to see what she was referring to. It would appear that these two are not the only gateways left. Those two indicators that are lit up indicate the gateways that are active or ready to be reactivated. Washi asked Raven curiously, "You mentioned that the only other gateway was in our old village of Whirlpool, which is now just ruins. How is that possible?" "It is quite possible that the area that the gateway is housed inside is still in one piece. That area in the old village is known as the Soul Sanctuary and was also where we held many of our extremely valuable pieces of equipment, knowledge and lost technology that we have kept hidden from our enemies, as well as holding the legendary Animus itself," Raven said, striking what his students have come to refer to as his thinking pose before arriving at a theory that explains everything. "You weren't able to reactivate the gateway to see if the Soul Sanctuary was still intact, were you, mentor?" Washi asked, realizing that something had to have happened a long time ago to lead his mentor to believe that this area had been totally destroyed by the fires of war. Raven smiled as she said, "I'm afraid so. After the network went off line, I had to wait and see if anyone had survived the massacre of our home and would contact me. But by that point it was already too late to even attempt to re-establish a link with any of the gateways." Yugito questioned him, "Mentor, how do the gateways work?" Raven looked at the gateway and started to talk of what it could do. The gateway uses a massive amount of chakra that it absorbs from the environment around it, and it can then be used to create a one-way trip once a week to another receiving gateway in the network. As you have just seen, my shadow clone activated the gateway and traveled here before dispelling himself in the process. That means that at any time we can open the gate from this side to send people or things through within a 30 minutes window. After 1 week the gateway can then be reopened once more for transport. Washi questioned him, "What about the other gateway that hasn't been activated yet?" "As long as the current gateways remain open, we have a 3-month window to go and find and then activate the last gateway in this system's network. But before we can even attempt to go to the Whirlpool ruins, there is an item that must be retrieved here first before we can begin, and without it cannot leave on a successful journey. Without it could take longer than the window we have available now." Raven told them this. As a result, Yugito was even more interested in what her mentor was discussing. "What's this item you talking about, mentor?" she asked. The item in question is a knowledge scroll that is hidden in one of the many hidden tombs of our clan here in the Land of Water. The scroll that we are after in this tomb is in fact the operation and creation manual to the gateways themselves, as well as a map that shows the entrance to the Soul Sanctuary. No matter what we do, that scroll must be found and brought back here immediately. Until now there has been no immediate rush to retrieve it, but that has changed as of now. You know where the entrance to the tomb is, but could not retrieve it, was another reason why Washi's mentor had not gone for them immediately. He had a hunch that this would call for his unique abilities. "Yes, I believe it is time to retrieve it today if possible," she said with some excitement. "Well then, what are we waiting for? The sooner we get the scroll, the faster we can get to the hidden whirlpool village." Then, as she spoke about it like an enthusiastic tourist, she saw the expressions on their faces as they realized that this was their ancestral home. "I didn't mean it like that, I'm sorry, but we do have to hurry, I take it," she realized, realizing that what she had said was as bad as if someone had informed her that the hidden cloud had been destroyed and was now a tourist attraction for everyone to see. He glanced at her and then said, "There is nothing to be sorry about, Yugito, because now there may be a chance for the hidden whirlpool to rise once more. We will have to charter a ship to take us to the Land of Waves. The village ruins will lie on the other side of the island near the whirlpools that once gave our country its name." As Washi started to leave the room, he ran into one of the recruits who was watching the situation at the shipping docks. It was obvious from the expression on his face that he had something to report. "We need to get the scroll right now then, because I have a feeling that if we need it all of a sudden, that our enemies will also be looking for something else entirely and could come across it. Mentors, I bring grave news. In order to sleep soundly, Hanzo, who is also referred to as the Old Man by many in the neighborhood, was just finishing up preparations for the night. He knew that he had given the Leaf Ninjas a chance against the Templars and that he had entrusted his life's work to someone who would value and use it for good. He then looked out one of his many windows to see that the sun had finally set, bringing with it the cool darkness of night and the contentment that would typically accompany a peaceful land. Fortunately for him, tonight would not bring him contentment, because he heard a noise at the front door and turned to investigate. He saw 5 men standing there with a distinctly malevolent and malicious expression on their faces. However, the old man sensed that there was still one more and turned around to see one of the most evil men he had ever seen in his long life. He immediately recognized this man and said, "I'm sorry, but my shop is closed and I am preparing for bed, so if you would be so content to see yourselves to the door." "This won't take long, old man. I just want to know some things, like what were the foreign ninjas doing here," he said, turning to face Bane, who was also known as the civilian to many in the Land of Water. He had been reading one of Hanzo's many books when he turned to face the elderly man. "Are you talking about those people who came to buy some of my books? I must be getting older than I thought. I didn't even notice they were foreigners. Excuse me, what you doing in my shop?" Hanzo had chosen to play dumb in the hopes of getting a good night's sleep and clearing up any suspicions about the Leaf Ninjas. "I know you know who I am, old man, so don't fuck with me. Now tell me the real reason they came here or you will regret it," Bane told Hanzo, not amused by his attempt to play the old sick man card. "We are all destined for God, young man," Hanzo said, standing to his full height and meeting the bounty hunter's eyes directly. With a cynical tone, Bane merely smiled cruelly at the elderly man before stating, "Spoken like someone who has enjoyed a long and fruitful life, but I bet that there's someone you care about. My family is all gone to God's hands. You have nothing to threaten me with, Templar." He knew a lot about them, which surprised Bane. "So you know a bit about me and my religion, do you, old man?" Bane asked. But since there was no way out at this point, Hanzo just wanted to let them know how he felt. "Yes, I know of your kind. I know that you claim to serve order, but all you bring is chaos. Do you know why?" In response to the question, Bane had to acknowledge that he was a little intrigued. He nodded his head, and Hanzo chose to respond, "It is because religion is flawed, but only because man is flawed, all men including this one." Hanzo made a point of looking directly toward Bane. "As well as the man standing before me now, I have seen more order and peace as well as freedom and chaos than what your people try to bring to the world. Because of that very reason I know you will fail and that the assassins will ultimately win over you. It's only a matter of time." Bane could sense that a confrontation between his men and this old man was imminent and was not at all amused. When Washi, Yugito, and Raven entered the central den's main training areas, they were shocked to see that not only were Mei and Kat seated, but also the current members of the new Land of Water Assassin Brotherhood. The students, who were also posing as shipping dock workers, stood in front of them and bowed to their mentors before starting their reports. Mentors, as per your orders, we have been keeping an eye on the coming goings of the people at the shipping docks and today observed two groups of people arriving here in the capital. One of the groups that arrived was in the military section of the docks wearing black traveling cloaks with red clouds upon them. We know there were more than 4 of them who have arrived here and were clearly being escorted by the Red Guard to meet with the daimyo at a later time. The Akatsuki had come to try to take them for whatever sinister purpose the organization had in mind for them, and the 3 Jinchuriki were now worried about not only their own safety but also the safety of their friends and fellow assassins. As the students proceeded with their report, however, things were going to become much more complicated. Despite them, another group of at least 16 other shinobi that we believe came from the Land of Fire have also arrived and already met with the daimyo. Raven became aware of this almost instantly, recognizing that their adversaries had devised a scheme to thwart their advancement in the Land of Water. Washi then made the decision to inquire about the foreigners from the Land of Fire, asking, "Can you describe these people to me?" They both nodded and started to describe the Leaf Warriors. We could easily tell that there were 5 high-level Jonins in the group. One of them was clearly a female with long black hair and the reddest eyes I have ever seen in my life. The next one was clearly a man with a strange green spandex-type outfit, and I swear one of the younger members of the party looked almost exactly like him. There was another one who seemed to be smoking a lot and had an unusual symbol on a piece of cloth at his waist, and a man with brown hair and some type of armor on his face that I could not recognize in the slightest. The last member was a man with hair that seemed to stick up in the air and was silver or gray with a mask upon and his headband covering one of his eyes. When Washi realized that there was more going on, he became extremely shocked that Konoha would send their best teams just to get him back. I know 4 of those Jonins personally and cannot fathom why they would be sent on this kind of mission. We're missing a great deal of the puzzle here, Washi said. I believe both parties have been sent to capture you 3 no matter the cost, and it is clear that our enemies the Templars have a hand in this as well, Raven said, adopting a contemplative stance and coming up with a single, original theory that seemed to fit the current circumstances. Why would they send 2 groups to capture us anyways? Fu asked, finding it almost incomprehensible that their enemy would be planning something like this in the first place. Because they didn't. I believe the Akatsuki was sent here to capture you 2 and me if they could. However, the Leaf Ninjas are here for me. After all, why would a large group of highly trained and formidable foreign ninjas be doing in the capital city of a foreign land unless it was to combat a very specific threat, like me, states Washi, who had come to this conclusion after hearing it for a moment but needed more information to make it real. Which means the threat of the Templars in the Land of Fire is only growing, and they knew exactly what is happening here, but who could be in a position of power that would be able to influence events like this? Yugito asked, quickly realizing his direction. My guess would be the 2 elders on the civilian council. They were the ones after all responsible for my removal from the ninja program in the first place. That may be the only reason that Tsunade allowed the mission to go ahead in first place, and for her to gain evidence against the Templars and finally expose them. Washi told them that. It just seems a little too far-fetched if you ask me. Wouldn't it have been easier to send the Akatsuki after us instead of this insane plan they've come up with? Fu expressed his continued curiosity about how this plan would work out. Raven responded by saying, "It may have been, but there is a reason for this action, and part of it is control over Washi and everything he represents as well as what he can do in the future." At this point, everyone noticed that Raven and Washi had both developed an odd expression that attracted their attention because it was obvious that something was occupying both of the Uzumaki's full attention at the moment. They turned to face one another, and Washi said, "You can sense it too? Right away." Raven then raised his eyebrows. "Yes, something has happened. Our eagle sense has become sensitive enough to know that something has happened in the city, and you must go and investigate it at once. I will remain here in the den." Washi nodded right away and headed for one of the den's numerous exits. Fu, Yugito, and Kat were right behind him, eager to find out what was going on and what it meant for them all. When Ino looked out one of the many hotel windows and saw the glow of fire off in the distance where the bookstore they had just been to was located, the Konoha ninjas were still trying to process what they had learned and what it might mean for them all. "Wasn't that the area where the bookstore you were talking about was located?" Ino asked. Both Kakashi and Kurenai were instantly drawn to this. Their heads turned, gazing at the scene in front of them, and they came to the somber conclusion that the old man's cryptic words might have just come true. Kurenai, Sai, and Neji, you're with me. We're going to investigate this right now. The rest of you stay here and keep your eyes open. Kakashi instantly entered a command. Like stayed and started giving orders like the seasoned soldier his combat experience had made him. The four of them left the house as soon as this was said, heading straight for the ground floor with only one goal in mind, regardless of what was waiting for them there. As the small bookstore burned, two men carrying a third seriously injured man left the building, swiftly followed by a fourth, the deadly bounty hunter and Templar agent Bania, who appeared to have just fought a small war and pulled a small letter opener from his left shoulder, throwing it to the ground with such force that it was almost buried from it. The fire was so intense that it was satisfied with destroying everything in its path. Bane's already negative mood was further exacerbated when he heard the injured man's cries for assistance. "Oh God, I think I'm dying here. Somebody help me please." Bane was forced to remove his favorite pair of battle goggles, which had a famous red tint, from his face as well. He crushed them in his hand and threw them to the ground with a scallop on his face, realizing that the older man had been a professional ninja and was still a serious threat even at his advanced age. After his fight with the elderly man, Bane had finally had enough of this. All right then. As he was saying this, he took out his gun and fired, striking the wounded bounty hunter in the eyes and severely frightening the other two men, who looked at him with wide eyes and expressions of sheer terror. "What?" he asked. When Bane swiftly produced a scroll and opened three rather strange-looking machines, the two men immediately fled in terror. Each man boarded one of the machines, which came to life rapidly as they raced off into the distance. At this precise moment, Kat and the assassins arrived and were taken aback by the scene occurring beneath a nearby building occupied by Momo, the Thieves Guild of Water Country's second.in command to the guild's leader. Momo quickly turned to face their leader before responding. "My master, there has been incident with old man Hanzo. One of our people was in the area and saw that bastard Bane and some of his henchmen enter the bookstore. By the time I arrived I saw two men exiting with a third injured man and then saw Bane himself and emerge looking less than presentable. I would say that the old man decided to go down fighting and did a real number on them because I was told there were 5 of these men that went in with Bane, only 2 walked out of their own power and the third was killed by Bane himself. I saw that evil man eyes and they were blood red with strange black things moving in them. It scared me to my core." Washi wondered how many members of the Uchiha clan were actually still alive and how much of a threat they posed after recognizing the description of the Sharingan that was unique to the clan right away. The woman watched as Washi got down on one knee and looked more closely at the scene before them as he activated his eagle sense and started to watch the scene unfold before him. He was surprised to see what appeared to be motorcycles as he did so. Fu was keeping her eyes open as the people below started to crowd around and several others started trying to put out the fire that was currently consuming the bookstore. After realizing that he had just witnessed the entire scene thanks to his bloodline ability, Yugito turned to face the crowd and saw 4 Konoha ninjas rush onto the scene with sincere expressions of surprise. He recognized all but one of them and became immediately alarmed when he saw that it was none other than Neji Hyuga, who had obviously activated his Byakugan and started to survey his surroundings. Washi saw the same expression on Yugito's face and realized instantly that they had to leave. They turned to face Momo and Kat and said, "We need to go right now." Kat said, "What? Why?" to him. He looked at her and then said, 4 of the Konoha ninjas have come to see what is going on and one of them has probably already detected us. We need to get moving right now. They're directly behind us on top of the building, but it appears that they are about to make a run. For what should we do?" Neji asked, keeping all of his senses open in the hopes that something like this would draw the attention of their potential target. He was not let down when he noticed 5 people standing atop one of the buildings, overlooking the scene below. After realizing that this might be one of their best chances to apprehend Naruto without encountering too many assassins' problems, Kakashi and Kurenai made the decision to go ahead, saying, "We go now, we can't pass up this kind of an opportunity." The 4-leaf ninjas managed to climb to the roofs, but as soon as they did, they saw that Neji had spotted them and was in full retreat. They all nodded, and Neji took off like a bat out of hell. The 5 people were obviously experts at this type of running system, and they were easily outrunning them until they ran into patrolling guards. The guards tried to stop them by force, but the assassins were well prepared for this and were killing the guards as they went, never really stopping, but it was enough to slow them down so the Leaf Ninjas could start to gain some ground on them. Neji started to notice that they were conversing at this point, and only because of his clan training was he able to even comprehend what they were saying. The lead assassin, who he took to be Naruto, instructed the two robbers to split up and flee, saying they would meet up later because they were the main targets of the ninjas who were currently chasing them. It was at this point that Naruto turned on them and fired a small door-like object that impacted Neji's neck. He immediately felt the effects taking hold and was unable to stop the hold of sleep from taking him into the realm of sleep. Both of them nodded and fled in different directions, but Neji stayed focused on his prime target, reading what they were saying more and more and filing it away for later in case they lost their prey. In order to stay free, the three assassins knew they needed to take advantage of this chance to flee as quickly as possible. Instead of using his poison dart gun to kill the victim, Washi had substituted a knockout toxin that only temporarily put the victim to sleep. As soon as Neji hit the ground hard, Kakashi, Kurenai, and Sai ran over to him. To their surprise, he started snoring loudly enough for everyone to hear, which made them all perspire. Kurenai looked up to see where they were praying, but they had vanished into the night. He sighed in frustration and then remarked, "Oh great, they got away and the only person who could track them is taking a little break now. This is just great. That's not what concerns me right now, we need to get out of here and then." Kakashi told them as he started carrying Neji in what was referred to as a fireman's carry right away. He also gestured for them to follow him off the roof because their position had definitely been compromised. Curious, Kurenai said, "And then, what?" as they hurried back to their hotel room. "And then we need to figure out how they found out we were there so fast. I think the answer is in that old man's journals and that's one of the reasons they're so important. And as we've just seen, important enough for someone to kill for." The assassins had just returned to the den and were relieved to see that Momo and Kat had managed to escape being pursued. Raven realized that something was seriously wrong and waited for Washi to inform them, "We're going to have to be extra careful from now on." Who or what has caused this mentor? Was the question that one of the numerous recruits chose to pose. Yugito continued, "The Konoha ninjas were there and were scouting the area. One of them has the bloodline limit known as the Byakugan, which allowed them to spot us sooner than we expected. If it hadn't been for Washi's eagle sense, we would have been captured without ever knowing that they were there in the first place. Washi, we are all present here. I believe it would be a good time to know our enemies," Raven said, realizing that their presence would only lead to more issues and that only Washi could provide them with the information they needed at this moment and how to avoid them at all. "This is my old sensei Kakashi. He's known as the copycat ninja and has copied more than 1,000 jutsus that are now at his disposal. He also possesses underneath that headband an implanted Sharingan that allows him to not only copy enemy movements and their signature jutsus as well as to predict what they will do in battle, which makes it one of the most dangerous bloodlines around," Washi said, nodding his head to his mentor before creating 6 shadow clones that then used the transforming jutsu to make them look like some of the people he chose to explain the most. Washi went on to explain, "His genin team consisted of myself and the last loyal Uchiha, who was also by chance responsible in part for my removal from the ninja program in the Leaf Village. The only one I recognized from his current team is the young pink-haired woman whose name is Sakura. From what I remember about her, she had excellent chakra control which made her perfect for medical nin jutsu, and she had a natural talent for genjutsu as well." The recruits were surprised to say the least as he moved to the next one, which was also a man with a short beard and a unique symbol at his waist. This man is Asuma Sarutobi, son of the 3rd Hokage and former guardian to the daimyo of the Land of Fire himself. From what I know about him, he is a master in hand combat as well as the use of wind chakra, much like myself. His former genin team consists of a young man named Shikamaru who, despite being quite lazy, is a formidable person in combat which I have seen myself. His intelligence is as much of a weapon as his shadow, which he has full control over, is. The next one is a young blonde woman named Ino who has the ability to transfer her consciousness to another living being and take control of them, as well as to observe the memories of any living and possible deceased individual, giving them incredible amounts of knowledge in the process, as well as the ability to possibly destroying minds. How far she is in these abilities I do not know. The next member of this team is Choji, who possesses the ability to manipulate his body into just about any size, including what would be like fighting a huge giant. These three can cover each other's weaknesses and enhance their strength at the same time in combat, which makes them a deadly combination and one of our biggest concerns. The recruits were a little bit surprised by this bit of information and realized why they would have to be even more careful than normal now. Washi then motioned for two of the clones to step forward and then continued to give his report. This woman is Kurenai. She is considered the Ice Queen of Konoha and is a master in the use of genjutsu. While the first two teams were mostly developed into combat units, hers is more suited for search and rescue or search and destroy. The first member I wish to speak about his name is Kiba and his nin.dog partner Akamaru. They come from a clan that specializes in both combat and hunting for either allies or enemies since they have many of the same qualities of their companions. He would represent the most heavy combat threat on the team, and since he's never alone it would make trying to deal with him little harder, and for all of you he can track you by your scent and possibly track you back to any of our hideouts or the dance, so you need to be extra careful around this particular team, and I'm not even done with the team yet. The next young man is Shino, who uses bugs in his jutsus both to combat enemy threats as well as to track them down. The last member of this team is a close friend of mine whose name is Hinata Hyuga, who might just joining us and is a member of the Hyuga clan. I will explain a little more about them in a bit, but right now I think it's time to explain about the last team that I know personally. As the final two clones approached and stood in front of everyone, including Kat and Momo, the recruits watched and attentively listened to everything he said. This is Might Guy, who is considered Konoha's predominant hand combat expert and master in just about every known form of taijutsu and trains much the same way as we do. His team consists of a young man named Rock Lee, looks almost like a younger clone of the man, and is a master in taijutsu as well, and is someone I would not take lightly if I were you. The next member is a young woman named Tenten, who is a weapons expert and takes her career as a kunoichi very seriously, and from what I have seen when I was in the village she will be just as well trained as her two male counterparts. The last member of this team is named Neji Hyuga and is Hinata's cousin. With him and her on these teams we will have a much harder time trying to move about the city, as before along with Kurenai's team will make it harder for us to move about the city without being seen, as the Byakugan, the Hyuga clan bloodline, can see through solid objects and up to about a mile away as well, and can assist them in several other things as well, including their combat style, which if they get the right kind of hit in they can kill the person instantly. It's one of the reasons they are generally put into tracking teams in the first place or heavy combat squads. And from what I have seen of Neji, he has recently achieved the rank of Jonin, which will make him a significant threat to us, but we must proceed with caution as there are two members that I know nothing about. The recruits all turned to Raven, awaiting his decision on what they should do next. We will continue with the operation as planned. We have put too much into this and cannot risk failure, but I believe it would be a wise decision to ask for assistance from both the Mist Resistance and the Thieves Guild, since I believe that the Leaf Ninja will undoubtedly be on the lookout for us tomorrow. There is an excellent chance they are here without even knowing it to expose the Templars in their own village, as it is quite unusual since such a large number of foreigners into the capital city of a foreign nation, even one like here, would not be taken like in the long run or even assisted just retrieve one person, and by now there's a good chance they have begun to see if things are not as black dot and white as they have been led to believe. We will keep an eye on them and do our best to avoid them for the time being, as we have many things to do. After tomorrow we need to get into contact with Captain Jack Webb, as we need to go our old homeland, as something very important has come up and could assist us in the fight against the Water Templars. May gestured for Kat and Momo to follow her out, saying, "We'll be waiting early in the morning for you guys, make a move, just be ready." May and Kat were both unaware that something significant was about to happen in the distant future. After giving them a nod, the assassins started talking about their targets and the morning's requirements. Neji was just starting to wake up when he noticed that practically everyone, including his cousin, was worried about him. He started to set up, still feeling very unsteady, but he was able to straighten himself out with little difficulty. He then looked around the room at everyone's faces and asked, "How long was I out?" The first to respond to him was Guy, who said, "About 2 hours, my youthful student." He was shocked to learn that he had been gone for so long, but he also realized that Naruto had the opportunity to kill him but chose not to, indicating that something else was going on. He was afraid that the daimyo of this country were using them, so he heard Kurenai pose a crucial question that was on the minds of most of them. How the hell did he know we were there? I don't know how he did it, but he saw us out of all those people in that crowd, and I swear one of them said something about something called eagle sense. Neji then shared his own special perspective on what he had witnessed and experienced. "What do you mean?" said. "How do you know what they said?" Ino asked, interested in what he had just said. "Actually, Ino, We are trained to read lips with the use of the Byakugan. And this eagle sense sounds just like it works similar to our own, Hinata responded to her former academy classmate. Asuma was taken aback by this and even more so by his slack-jawed pupil's subsequent statement. Well, we know that Naruto is a member of the Uzumaki clan, right? Well, that explains what's in both my own family's archives and this very, very old journal by some weird old guy by the name of the Warren Vidic, he said, to which they all nodded. He then asked, what do you mean in both that book and your family's archives? Kakashi and the others were taken aback to discover that there was some sort of connection between what Neji had heard and what was in these archives. Shikamaru placed the book forward and placed it on a large table for all to see and flipped to a very specific page and began to read aloud despite the fact that only one or two of them could read just a few words on the book's pages. Journal entry, Project Animus. Lead scientist of project, Vidic Warren. Assistant researcher, Stillman Lucy. Date, March 5, 2012. Today a new subject we have codenamed Subject 16 has been successfully integrated into the Animus and we have observed the target ancestor named, Ezio Auditore. During study and recording of subject and his ancestor we then noted that a rather unique type of sense was discovered which the ancestor remarked as eagle vision, which seemed to allow the subject in question to possess better than normal eyesight and the unique ability to detect friend from foe and unique things in the environment that would be normally hidden from all. We have currently sent a sample of Subject 16's DNA off for analysis, hoping to discover an ancestral link to this genetic ability we have begun to classify as bloodlines. Are you turning us that this book is over 500 years old and that the beginning of bloodlines began even before the Great Even event occurred and your family has been researching it all this time, and what language is this? Ino was the first to share her thoughts about what they had just learned. Shikamaru simply glanced at her and then said, actually Ino, my family has been looking for something like this for a very long time and the language here is English, as in the trade language we are all accustomed to speaking. But very few people are accustomed to writing and reading it. My family is, and we have translated hundreds of books into several languages here in the elemental nations. In fact, Lady Tsunade used some of our books to save Choji here after the debacle that became known as the Sasuke retrieval mission. In part of the archive is a set of books that talks about the Uzumaki's clan's unique ability to detect friend from foe and find things that not even the Byakugan could find. My father told me to read all of those journals as they might help us in finding Naruto. Yamato had to inquire. The journals have something else to say, don't they? Since he could sense that there was still more. Shikamaru was able to simply nod and continue with record he had marked, April 4, 2012. We have begun to notice that Subject 16 is experiencing what we refer to as the bleeding effect and have noticed that a rather than usual event has taken place in that Subject 16 has inherited the bloodline ability known as Eagle Vision. We are currently conducting a special experiment to see if this ability can be passed on to others who have no ancestral history of ever possessing this unique bloodline and will report in future journal entries our findings. Shikamaru then turned to a different journal entry and started reading it aloud again, April 27, 2012. The secondary bleeding effect experiment has revealed that although certain traits and memories can be successfully passed on to other people who do not possess a direct ancestral link, we have discovered that the unique bloodline known as Eagle Vision does not appear to possess the same type of ability to be passed down like knowledge and experiences can be to other people. But on a side note, the DNA tests revealed that a rather unique strand of DNA exists in both Subject 16 and a future subject we are currently tracking, which will be codenamed Subject 17, seem to possess. We have also noticed that the unique DNA strand appears to become more dominant the more the Animus is used. Our board has decided to create a secondary Animus project to train potential defense operatives for the company. He next turns to them all and stated, they discovered that this Eagle Vision was in fact a very rare and old bloodline and that only say 1 in every 20 people even possess, and that during that timeline maybe 1 person in a century would activate until this machine, the Animus, came around, strengthening the DNA in the process. And with what we know about the assassins, this is the perfect kind of bloodline limit for them. I only wish that I had more information on it to share with you all, but I can tell you this much: getting the drop on him is going to be very difficult to say the least. Neji suspected that he would soon be the center of attention again, and his suspicions were confirmed when Shikamaru turned to face him with a slack-jawed expression that said, "It's your turn, go away." While it was difficult to discern what they were saying at the time, but they were discussing some kind of battle action that would occur tomorrow near or at the shipping docks, and they were pretty persistent about it, which means something is going to take place tomorrow and we need to be ready for it, the report read, as everyone in the room saw the slack-jawed ninja's gaze fall upon the stoic Hyuga's direction. Being aware that tomorrow would be crucial for everyone, Kakashi turned to the gathered ninja right away and started giving orders. All of you get a good night's sleep and rest up as much as possible. In the morning we'll set up teams to track the assassins and to keep an eye on things that will be unfolding tomorrow. The rather stupid bounty hunter was thrown out of the daimyo's way as he entered the room to observe the scene directly in front of him. Sato was walking down one of the many holes that made up his palace's corridors when he noticed it standing directly in front of him and his fellow Templar and what some would consider a close friend, Bane. Bane was being attended to by one of the many nurses who lived there at the time. After expressing his admiration for his friend's behavior, Bane remarked, "You could have just ordered him to move, you know. Where would the fun in that be? Although I have to admit that I am extremely curious as to why you decided to start a small war for this old man." Sato simply grinned before responding in his eerie, dark manner. The Leaf Ninjas went to see him almost immediately upon their arrival. Not only that, but he knew about his Templars and pretty much stated that the assassins would kill us all pretty soon. What I wasn't counting on was for this old fossil to be a cage-level ninja running a damn bookstore. We both know that the Leaf Ninjas will begin their search for the nine-tailed fox host soon, and if they do join our enemies, just eliminate them like any other threat, my friend. It's that simple, Sato continued. The morning was calm and cold, and the dock workers went about their daily lives with a watchful eye, aware that any mistake could result in the loss of their jobs or even their lives due to the evil that still holds sway over this nation and its citizens, many of whom are still living in fear for their lives. Aerosmith's Raven is back in the saddle is playing in the background as they approach. One of the numerous security guards who chose to make other people's lives a living hell turned to face a small group of people and immediately recognized them as assassins at the same time that Raven and a few of the more skilled recruits in the art of combat were approaching to start their portion of the upcoming conflict. Before he could sound the alarm, the group's oldest member quickly and fluidly pulled his arm back and threw it forward, punching the guard in the face and sending him hard back into the nearby wall, knocking him out with a single blow. The other guards, sensing they were being attacked, immediately went on the attack, thinking they were better than everyone else because that was the common arrogance that seemed to govern all Templars and was the easiest thing for the assassins to take advantage of when in combat. The recruits were making their mentor very proud as they easily defeated the security guards, but they were taken aback by the arrival of multiple Red Guard members who had undoubtedly been tasked with protecting this specific shipping dock and the secrets it held at all costs. Raven, however, quickly defeated them in less than a minute despite his advanced age and artificial leg, as the final body dropped to the ground, shocking even his most experienced recruits at what a fully trained assassin was truly capable of. To his astonishment, there was only one more Red Guard member left. He seemed to be even more skilled than the others and was obvious that he was the unit's superior officer. The guard member quickly charged into battle against Raven, giving the elderly man a real workout for once. Before the guardsman could even right himself, he saw the flash of light from Raven's hidden blade as it entered his chest through the soft part of the armor, killing the man in a matter of seconds. This would have continued if Raven hadn't grabbed the man's staff and threw him with great force, using his own weight against him to throw the guardsman straight through a nearby wall, shocking the people on the other side. As soon as the recruits approached their mentor, the dock workers hurried out. He bowed and signaled that the bombs had been set and that the timer was running while they were speaking. Then, he made a quick gesture and declared, "The docks are going to blow everyone out of here right now if you value your lives." The description of this facility would prevent any immediate oppression of the people and was one step closer to the liberation of this country. Within a minute of everyone clearing the documents, the first explosion occurred, destroying a large warehouse. This, in turn, set off a series of explosions that distributed the rest of the military area along with all of the weapons that the Red Guard would surely use to oppress this country once again. After noticing that the first of the three towers would soon fall, Raven signaled to his recruits to follow him in order to support the other Brotherhood members, who were surely already involved in intense combat, and that it was time to join them. He knew that if two more towers were destroyed, the control he now had would be seriously threatened, and he would have to act immediately if he wanted to keep this country under control. Sato and Bane watched as the dock area that supported his military arm was completely destroyed, and the first tower that stopped the mercenaries and their leader from meddling in his affairs was completely destroyed. He immediately turned to one of his many generals and started to work orders. Send out 3 battle battalions at once. Any special instructions, my lord? The soldier asked hastily for more orders. They are to protect those 2 towers at the cost of their lives even, and to do as much damage to the assassins and any members of the resistance as much as possible, and I expect results. Bane walked forward and looked out over the city, realizing that it would look very different from before and that their strength would be affected no matter what today, because it's a multi-front attack. If they succeed in taking down his last 2 towers, their enemies are going to multiply rather quickly. The soldier bowed to his leader and hurried off to meet up with his men to relay the orders and to begin the defense of the towers as soon as possible. With a determined and hopeful expression on his face, Sato told him, "That may be an old friend, but it's only one battle in this war, and we can recover from it this time." After successfully demolishing the first tower, Yugito and her group of recruits were now advancing into the defensive ring of the second tower in order to plant their bombs and watch as the tower collapsed, permanently eliminating the threat to the inhabitants of the Land of Water. After killing one of the tower guards, Yugito turned around to see a full-fledged battle battalion marching down the street with the intention of eliminating them permanently. Yugito had started to try to dig a hole so her forces could pass through quickly, but she discovered that their enemies were doing everything in their power to stop the assassins from finishing their own task. This was the moment when she also felt they were no longer alone in this battle and that the advantage had shifted greatly in favor of their enemies. She yelled, "Oh, shit. Everyone brace yourselves, we're about to be in for the fight of our lives." The recruits did everything they could to prepare, following their young mentor straight into the thick of things, only to be taken aback by the arrival of resistance members who collaborated with Mei to bring down the tower. "Lady Assassin, this is only the advanced force, there's still 2 more battalions on their way here. We have to get this tower down now," exclaimed one of the resistance members as he hurried up to Yugito, his face displaying fear. "We were working on a hole through their lines a little earlier, we need that opening once more or we won't stand a chance at all. Coordinate with my recruits and see if you can make a hole for us," she said as Yugito swiftly put down another guard and then a soldier who tried to hit the resistance member before her. The man then engaged several others and ended their wicked lives as quickly as he could. The young resistance member nodded to her and suggested that they organize an attack. Almost as if someone had prayed and had been answered by God, a number of Washi clones descended upon their adversaries at this precise moment, creating a distraction that the assassin recruits and resistance members clearly exploited by pushing through the gathered tower guards. They immediately started to set their charges and then ran like the devil was on their heels. The tower exploded in a spectacular show and display of flames as soon as the resistance members and recruits left the courtyard. This sent several pieces of the tower flying straight into the battalion, further reducing your numbers. However, the clones that had previously given them an advantage were now all but gone, and even though the battalion had suffered massive casualties, the next 2 would be arriving in a matter of seconds. The lead battalion officer was about to give his combat orders when he ordered his men to speak. Parts of the battalion appeared unaffected by the effective but antiquated weapons, and he was about to laugh when he heard the sound of a fusion running down. He quickly ducked as a large explosion rocked his men, killing many of them in the process. The 2 battle battalions formed up with what was left of the first one and prepared to finish off not only a large group of resistance fighters but also a sizable portion of the assassin Brotherhood in one deadly strike. A large man in heavily reinforced armor approached Yugito and extended his hand to her and the nearby resistance member who had sought refuge on the ground from the massive explosion that killed so many of these evil men. This was a moment of surprise for many as men wearing unusual types of armor reminiscent of ancient Japanese samurai armor walked through the dust cloud that was still settling due to the falling tower. "I would like to thank you for finally making a hole big enough for us to punch through," he said, letting them both take his hand as he helped them stand up. "I am honored to fight by an assassin," he sighed again, adding, "and we have much to discuss." Although his first wave of clones had been completely destroyed, the mission's main goal had been accomplished with the destruction of the tower, which sent several pieces flying into the waiting enemy soldiers, killing many of them. Washi watched the scene below with great intensity as his clones went to work killing the assembled soldiers who were meant to continue the oppression of the Land of Water. He saw that there were still quite a few to continue the current battle and at least 2 more fully equipped and fresh battle battalions to continue the engagement. However, Washi saw a storm of arrows flying out of the dust from the destroyed building, striking many in the battle group's front row before exploding in a spectacular display of flames and distraction, before he could make any more shadow clones to aid his allies. Washi watched as a sizable contingent of fighters who resembled samurais emerged from the debris cloud and engaged the enemy. One of them, obviously the leader, approached Yugito and introduced himself calmly. After a little less than a minute of conversation, the two of them engaged the enemy forces with such vigor that they were forced to make their way to the operation's last tower as he went on to achieve his own goal. When Washi arrived at a rather unusual-looking structure that resembled an old Gothic church, he immediately activated his eagle sense and they started scanning the area for the crypt's entrance. Eventually, he found it and hurried inside his clan's crypt to get the scroll before it was too late. It had taken some time, but finally the Konoha ninjas saw Naruto making multiple clones that helped in the attack of one of the towers before continuing on his way with a clear goal on his face. At this point, they were doing everything they could to remain on the roofs of the buildings, knowing full well that a full-scale war appeared to be raging below them. He then said, "He just opened some kind of secret doorway into the crypt of the Dawn of Souls Church. He's just opened it, we have to hurry or we're going to lose him." Kakashi, Neji, and Guy were now doing everything in their power to reach their target before he vanished once more, using Neji's bloodline to keep track of him. However, they caught a glimpse of surprise. When the three-leaf ninjas finally reached the church's roof, they discovered that the doorway had been closed on them. Kakashi and Neji approached the door and started to examine it carefully, noticing a strange-looking skull on it. Neji then put his hands in the two eye sockets and pulled them off, having seen Naruto do the same with them. The door was reopened to reveal a dark corridor ahead of them, and they could definitely hear noises coming down the corridor. This made them realize that they would have to rely on stealth to accomplish their mission. After jumping down a hole in the floor and landing in a section of the Dawn of Souls that appeared to have been set up to house a number of water monks as their final resting place, Washi started to walk down the corridor until he came to an area with numerous coffins scattered throughout. Each lid represented the Brotherhood and the Uzumaki clan, and what caught his attention was the presence of several dozen bounty hunters who seemed to be defiling the clan graves. After approaching a few of his men and listening in on their conversation, the group's lead bounty hunter said, "It's hard to believe this section was hidden from the rest of the church." As the leader made the decision to address them, the other man remarked, "I know what you mean, man. Even with that little thing it says something about some curse promising death of anybody disturbing these tombs. But at least nobody's trying to kill us." After hearing this, Washi thought of a way to deal with the bounty hunters. He started scanning the room in the hopes of finding the chamber entrance where the scroll was hidden. With the help of his eagle sense, he was able to locate it, so now he just needed to deal with the intruders. "You two will be dead if you don't get back to work right this moment." At this precise moment, Akima noticed a message announcing a new mission called Respect for the Dead, Full Synchronization. The objective was to use eagle sense to scan the room and poison every target without coming into contact with the ground. Her father said to himself, "It would appear they have no respect for my dead clan's dignity, but that little bit about a curse gives me a wondrous idea how to get them out of here permanently." Akima accepted the mission without hesitation and watched as her father started his mission in the room. In order to get into position to fire his darts without any issues and still make it to the sealed chamber by free running without any issues, he quickly switched from his hidden blade and hook blade to the poison dart gun. He then activated Eagle Sense and started to quickly identify everyone who had already defiled the tomb. He started by lining up his first shot at one of the bounty hunters and letting the poison dart fly, hitting the man in the back of the neck. He then moved on to the next bounty hunter and the next as quickly as he could. Simultaneously, the three Konoha ninjas watched in awe and shock as he worked to rid the room of the bounty hunters who were destroying this crypt. They could not hold him responsible for this because the men obviously had no regard for the dead in front of them. They had to cover Guy's mouth with their hands before he could speak because his voice was not known to have a low decibel point. He was taken aback by the action, but then he saw that they were both staring at him and clearly saying, "Not right now." They could also hear the bounty hunters growing increasingly concerned that the curse was real. Nevertheless, the lead bounty hunter in charge had finally had enough and marched over to an unopened coffin, threw open the lid, and proceeded to defile the remains inside with a look of pure triumph and enjoyment on his face. He was unaware that Washi had already loaded a new cartridge of poison, this time with a much faster acting poison, and let a poison dart fly, striking the man in the jugular, and watched as the poison started to take effect right away. The other bounty hunters started to panic and flee the tomb, fearing for their lives after witnessing numerous colleagues and superior parish members in front of them. The 3 Konoha ninjas watched as the man started to cough up blood, joked about it, and went into convulsions, falling first on his knees and then on his back as his life dwindled before his eyes. Kakashi watched as Naruto unwrapped one of the swords on his back, channeled his chakra into the blade, and then launched his attack from the blade, sending a wave of wind. Infused chakra. The 3 Konoha ninjas watched as the wave of chakra struck the entrance that had been made into the tomb, completely destroying it upon impact and cutting it off from the outside world once more the moment the last bounty hunter left the tomb. The 3 then returned their focus to their main target as he approached what appeared to be a small balcony and realized he had discovered something. Kakashi was the first to spot the unique seals carved into the walls and quickly and silently alerted his allies. After watching Kakashi inspect the seal, Neji and his sensei guy hurried over to say, "It's specifically designed to prevent us from using our chakra to walk on the walls using the tree climbing exercise technique, and judging by the way it is designed for someone to use the free-running art the guy was talking about earlier." This led Kakashi to conclude that there was something unique about this crypt. "We need to get over there as fast and as quietly as possible without being detected by him, otherwise he'll make a run for it. We can't allow that to happen this time. Now let's move out." He then realized that the only way to get to where Naruto was at the moment was to use free running upon the beams to reach the balcony required if. After he finished speaking, they all climbed onto the closest support beam and headed toward their target, trying to hide behind the support pillars to avoid being seen. However, Neji intervened, and they started to watch what Naruto was doing as he studied the wall in front of him before pushing a section of it to release a chamber door. The door then fell forward into the tomb, revealing a hidden chamber that he was unable to see inside even with his Byakugan. Neji remarked with a hint of admiration at the strength of their target clan's seal work, "As I believe there may be seals inside of that chamber as I cannot see its interior even with the use of my Byakugan." Washi entered the room with a specific goal in mind. He started to look around the room and noticed a few things, such as the sarcophagus in front of him that bore the names of 2 significant members of the Assassin Brotherhood who were also his ancestors. The names were Desmond and Rebecca Miles. He could only smile as he said, "Rest in peace, ancestors," to the coffin. He then started scanning the room until he found the scroll, and beside it was a rope darda, an item he had only lately started to see in his dreams as he relived the memories of his ancestor Connor. This one had obviously been there for a long time and was starting to show signs of wear, but he also found a scroll on a pedestal and realized that it had been placed here in safekeeping in case another assassin happened to find it later. He quickly pocketed the weapon and the scroll next to it, noting that it was in good condition, and then he walked over to his main goal, noting that it was undamaged. He then heard an iron gate click, indicating that it had been unlocked, and he quickly followed the path for before him, using his eagle sense to guide them along its dark path. As he left the crypt, he said a silent prayer that the unworthy would not disturb his clan's secret resting place anymore. 100% complete synchronization eagle vision was used to scan the room and successfully poison only the chosen targets without coming into contact with the ground. When the Konoha finally arrived at the outcropping, they started to enter the inner tomb and were quite impressed with what they saw. They walked around the room, taking in everything that was there, and eventually Neji noticed the gate that appeared to lead down a dark out. He approached it and found it to be open, and he could just barely hear footsteps coming down the corridor. "I think he went on this quarter. We have to hurry if we want to catch up with him," he said, turning to his fellow Jonin in a hurry. After the door opened, the 2 of them gave him a quick nod and followed him down the hallway, not knowing where they were going but knowing that they were engaged in combat with their main target. When a small sewer grate opened in the middle of the street, Washi was able to crawl out. He looked around to make sure none of his pursuers were there and noticed that some of his allies were there, which may have been a sign that he was alerting the residents to his presence. People were still very concerned about the earlier battle that had taken place, noting that there were many more people there than before. After steadying the scroll on his back, Washi faced the crowd of people getting ready to blend in when he heard someone opening the sewer grate. He realized instantly that his assailants had followed him all the way into the tomb and were now standing behind him, saying, "Oh come on man, give me a break." It said, "Naruto Uzumaki, by order of the Hokage and the Council of Konoha you are hereby ordered to return with us immediately to the Hidden Leaf." he turned around to see the faces of his old Leaf Ninja teammates. After turning around and confidently staring them down, he saw that more Konoha shinobi were coming every minute and came to the conclusion that he was in fact outnumbered. If Tsunade was the only one to issue the recall order, I would return in a heartbeat, but the fact that the council and the elders have also issued the order immediately tells me to not return for my own protection as well as my friends. You're all being manipulated by the Templars and you don't even know it. He recognized two people he could trust and who might allow him to leave, but he realized that most of them seemed to have their own goals in this situation. Especially one of them was staring him down intently when he realized that the young man in question had been silent for too long. When he said, "You don't get it, do you? The elders are just using you to do their dirty work for them," Kakashi and the other Jonin were taken aback. In a voice that sounded like a plea, Kakashi told him, "That's not true. You're being controlled by these assassins, Naruto. You have no idea what's really going on, do you?" he asked, grinning at them and chuckling lightly. Kakashi turned to the others and said, "I will engage him, interfere only if necessary, I have to do this." He knew that something was wrong, but he was powerless to do anything about it without evidence, so he just set out to finish the mission that the council and the Hokage had given him. After saying this, he immediately launched himself in a dead run at his former pupil, intending to kill him so that he could be returned to his native country. However, his pupil promptly replaced the hood over his head and went into defensive mode, rapidly realizing that he needed to disable rather than kill us, and the two started fighting. Tenten, Hinata, and Sai watched the fight with bated breath as it was evident that the two were equally matched in their hand skills. Washi avoided every single punch and kick and even managed to land a few of his own, surprising his former sensei. As the battle progressed, it became evident that the other Jonin would soon start to step in and help their comrades defeat their target. However, what happened next shocked them all, as Jiraiya and a number of assassins appeared to stop them in their tracks. The Sannin then declared, "All of you stand down now by order of the Hokage." When Kakashi realized that he was actually in front of them, he quickly turned to face Washi and said, "It looks like you and Raven have been doing quite a job, Washi," loudly enough for all of the Konoha ninjas to hear. Kakashi was not convinced that this was the fabled Toad Sannin and Spymaster of the Hidden Leaf, so he started to try to dispel any genjutsu that might have been in effect. "You have no idea, you old pervert, but I do have a question. Why didn't she tell them what the real mission was about?" Washi asked his second sensei after passing a stunned Kakashi. After rolling his eyes, Jiraiya gestured for Sai to approach him, bowed, and said, "Reporting as ordered, Lord Jiraiya." "Who does he work for, you old pervert?" Washi asked after examining the young man. "Oh man, why do you guys continue to not show me any respect?" Jiraiya simply knew that his students would not respect him because it seemed to be a common occurrence for them to be somewhat disrespectful of his choice of other profession. In any case, he is a member of Danzo's root program and, believe it or not, knows quite a bit about the Assassin's Order and has been doing his best to keep your order secret as well as to help Tsunade gather enough evidence to send him to the Templars for good in the Land of Fire. To their astonishment, Washi started to survey the area before beckoning them to follow him, saying, "We have to move, all of us right now, this area is still not secure." The Konoha shinobi were all genuinely shocked by what they were hearing. Realizing that something crucial was about to be revealed to them, Jiraiya and Sai nodded to him and hurried after him down a dim hallway with the assassin escort. The other Leaf ninjas soon followed. Since Kakashi was genuinely clueless about what was happening and it was evident that none of the other Jonin were either, Jiraiya handed them all over at once before turning to face Sai and asking, "I take it you did not tell them anything about your mission, did you?" He replied by nodding his head. "Lord Danzo's and Lady Tsunade's orders were to be sure that I made contact with the Assassin's Order and make sure that no one was secretly a Templar agent. I was able to confirm that no one here is an agent of the Templars, however I was unable to make contact with the Brotherhood before your arrival. Can someone just tell me what the hell is really going on?" was the question that seemed to be on everyone's mind after Kakashi looked at the three of them, shocked by what they had just heard. "I assume that all of you have met the old man who ran the bookstore, didn't you, as I instructed you to do upon your arrival?" Jiraiya chose to give them a brief overview of what was actually happening. Kurenai continued, "He gave us a lot of his personal research and then said it was safer in our hands," to which they all nodded. "They killed him, didn't they?" "Yes, all of us saw it, including Naruto," she replied. "Actually, Kurenai, my original given name is Washi, It was the one known as the civilian who did the deed, but I still do know who was in the shop. He was speaking loudly. He was a good friend, but now I have to ask all of you a question. Did you not find Washi's removal from the shinobi program seemed a bit odd, especially to those of you who know what's after him? Jiraiya said, a little saddened by the loss of one of his old friends, but knowing that life would continue as usual. In addition to leaving many questions unanswered, Kakashi, Kurenai, and Guy immediately recalled their encounter with the two Akatsuki organization members who had somehow gotten into the hidden leaf undetected. However, for these three, it also meant that someone was aware of how vulnerable they would all be at this particular moment, as well as their target. Now that everyone was interested in what the old pervert was talking about, he continued, what most of you may not know is that the two elders approached me to be the new Hokage even before the old man was in the ground. He saw the expressions on everyone else's faces. They offered you the position of the Hokage first. Why you seem so disturbed by that? Asuma had to ask, now that she was really interested in this. Because it was just one of many things that their hands have been in. Offering me the position of the Fire Shadow would be devastating to the village's security and information gathering capabilities. You have to understand, at that moment in time there was no other spy master to take up my spy network, which would leave the village blind to any future threats, including the one that was coming in the village looking for Washi the day we were set to leave. It's a little too convenient if you ask me. Guy was the first to say, you're saying that the elders are in fact, in response to what they were all thinking at the time. Jiraiya looked at their shocked reactions and realized that there was much more going on than they realized. Templars. Yes, I am. There's also rumors that they were the only two people to know the location of Kushina's delivery room. She was giving birth to Washi here, as also that night that the nine-tailed fox attacked the village that very night. Sai followed by saying, Danzo was also investigating them at this point in time thanks to what occurred during the invasion, trying to discover how Orochimaru's forces were able to gain the intel that they had in the first place, but was never able to definitively that they were involved in it, but certain signs are pointing directly at them and several members of the civilian council. Sakura subsequently realized that, the same people who set up your removal for the program are the same people who are also suspects in the leaking of information during the invasion. Washi lowered his hood and smiled an enormous grin before responding, exactly, the Akatsuki organization already a known part of the Templars. In fact, there is a couple of them here already in the Land of Water. They brought you all here in force to do one thing, take me back. That way when the Akatsuki decides to attack the village they have a bargaining chip. That's why they removed me from the program, so I could not get any stronger and I'd be under the control of the civilian and elder councils. But on the other hand, if you were to all fail or be killed, they would already have a chance here to capture me and the other two Jinchuriki. So the way they see it, it's a win-win. The first to recognize the gravity of the situation was Kakashi, who remarked, so we are all here to basically find the evidence to destroy these Templars once and for all. Washi further decided to inform them that, if you can't, one of two things is going to happen. 1. They will execute whatever backup plan they have, any could mean the death of everyone we care about and turning the Land of Fire into a hellhole, much like some of the lands you had to fight in, like both the Land of Spring and here in the Land of Water. The only other option to prevent that is for the assassins to take them out, but the chances of that happening are slim and none, as we have to fight like hell just to save this land and to rebuild the Brotherhood. Since you do not operate within the confines of the law, you are free to do things they cannot, like remove potential threats, Sai said, giving everyone a clear understanding of what it all meant. As Raven and, much to his surprise, Jack Webb chose to approach them at this precise moment, Washi remarked, that is correct, but even then we have to make sure it's done for the right reasons. As the elderly killer approached them, Raven grinned broadly and remarked, May was able to contact Jack here a bit early and he's well aware of the situation. Washi started to leave when he heard the voices of two people who knew him better than most would believe. Then we better get going. We will be seeing you all later. Tenten and Hinata simultaneously said, Sir, we ask for permission to accompany Washi on his mission. As the two girls watched the tender moment between their old friend and his fiancée copyrightee, they realized how much they loved each other and that they would miss each other until this mission was over. Washi approached his old friends and saw that Kakashi was standing right behind him, looking worriedly at his mask and eye. The two of them finished kissing and then parted ways until they were reunited. Don't worry, Sensei, I plan to take good care of them, and when I do get back, you and I are going to have a little talk about what's been going on in the Hidden Leaf. Washi replied. Of that we do, Kakashi said after nodding. I have so much to tell you about your past. Washi told his old sensei, have you forgotten about my bloodline called the Animus? It allows me to relive my ancestors' memories including my parents, but you can tell me things that I would have to wait to see. Just remember to keep them all safe. Well aware that something had happened in the Land of Waves to justify the good captain's quick return, Washi left with his new friends. As my mentor would say, it is a pleasure to see you again, Jack, but I have to ask what prompted your rapid return, as we only just sent out a request for your aid to head to the Land of Waves. Tenten and Hinata followed closely behind the two warriors as they headed to the documents, listening in on their discussion about what was going on in the world outside the Land of Water. The Templars, who were now running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads chopped off, would find the two of them an attractive target, so Jack kept his weapons ready in case of an attack while still continuing to walk at his leisurely pace. The expert and lethal privateer, or pirate, depending on your point of view, simply replied, I'm afraid to say that Aizen has been stepping up his efforts to not only hunt us down and kill us but also in helping someone do something around the island of Whirlpool, which is now known as the Land of Waves. For the last 5 months we have not been able to get any intelligence from the island at all, in response to the combined attack that had liberated yet another area of the capital city from their oppressive rule. I find that most disturbing as I helped set that island free in the first place, and if they're helping someone to control things, there's something else is going on altogether. We need a really fast ship to get there. I hope you got one handy. As they approached the harbor, Jack told him, just wait till you see my pride and joy, Washi. They saw Raven standing there as well after approaching the boat that would transport them to Jack's ship. I hope you were not waiting long, mentor, they said. Not at all, Washi. It gave me time to think about what we need to do once we arrive, but I believe the good captain is about to inform us that things are not as they appear, Raven said, turning to face them. He then gestured for them to follow him into the boat as they sailed into the bay, saying, I don't know all the details, Master Assassin, but all I do know is that it's really bad. We're all set, Dad. The wreckers said that they get the engines going even better now than it was about a week ago. They saw Mai approaching them as they boarded a massive battleship that had undergone significant modifications. The refits helped a good deal, didn't they? What about the improvements to the weapon system? Better than we thought. We should be able to take on anything they can throw at us. The only ship we need to be worried about, I believe, would be Aizen's, she stated to him. Hopefully if we do run into that ship, won't be alone, given the fact that the other 7 Mariner Lords will be arriving at the Land of Waves within a week. He had seen the ship before and understood what she was talking about. He also knew that their only chance would be for all 7 Mariner Lords to take it on at the same time. He then said, Helmsman, lay in a course for the Land of Waves, as he entered the bridge. Yes, sir. The bridge then came to life as everyone went about their daily tasks. Washi then noticed a plaque on the wall that said when and by whom the ship was made. What shocked him the most was learning that the ship had been built following the significant events of 2012. Raven also noticed this and responded, this is just one of many ships that survived the great event or were created afterwards and that are still in one piece even today. There's even a small island not too far from Whirlpool that hides our own fleet. Washi was shocked to learn this because he suspected that there was some history that had happened after the great event that he was still unaware of. With a mixture of excitement and curiosity, Tenten examined the weapon that Washi had given her. Raven chose this time to provide a brief description of the weapon, saying, the weapon you hold in your hands is known as a rope dart. It was created by our ancestor Xiao Jun. After that, she examined the weapon and was genuinely impressed by its design and simplicity. The dart portion of it was still in one piece, but the rope had long since aged and lost its usefulness. Do you guys have any spare rope I could use? She asked, turning to one of the sailors who was waiting at the door to help them if they needed it. After the sailor nodded and left, Raven placed a scroll on the table next to the antique weapon and unfolded it to reveal the fundamental designs of a typical rope dart. Tenten read the scrolls that described the weapon, but she discovered that she was unable to read any of the attacks because they were written in the ancient English trade language, which only a small number of their group, including Shikamaru, could even understand. After noticing her worried expression, Raven and Washi asked, you don't understand English, do you? Both of them nodded when she acknowledged that she was unaware of it. Raven then gave her a second scroll and remarked, this scroll translates the sections that you need to read. After studying both scrolls, she realized that she could repair the rope dart she was holding in her hands and create new ones in a short amount of time. All she needed was a workshop and the necessary supplies. If I have the resources or a workshop that I could use, I could make at least 20 more of them right now within a couple of hours. After hearing their conversation from the doorway, Mai made the decision to speak up and said, "Well, you're in luck because we do have a workshop on board and plenty of supplies for you to use. Please follow me." In just 1 minute, they were all standing in one of the numerous workshops, watching Tenten work her magic on the metals. In that hour, she had repaired and made usable the old rope dart in addition to creating 3 brand new ones. He turned to one of his longtime friends and said, "Nice work, Tenten. All we need is a few more made, and I know that you want a couple of them for yourself." Washi had studied and tested the darts using his ancestor Connor's memories. He approached Mai, who was standing in the doorway, and asked her, "How long until we arrive at the coast of waves?" She gave him a positive nod and started working on the remaining darts. By tomorrow morning, Raven said that there's a Pacific place in the coast we can safely anchor, as well as for you two to find whatever it is you're looking for. As Tenten continued her magic, he smiled at her and turned back to his 2 childhood friends. Tenten and Hinata were still trying to understand the assassin and Templar thing that had taken over not only his life but was also starting to infiltrate theirs, and they still found it hard to believe that Naruto, or Washi as they had learned that this was his original first name that had been kept hidden from both him and them, could be so composed at this moment. It was difficult for the 2 young women to accept that one group could be in charge of causing so much death and destruction, even though they had heard the terrifying tales that were supposed to have taken place in the Land of Water as a result of the Bloodline Wars. However, they both started to see that a lot of things that had been happening in the Land of Fire as well as the Land of Water were starting to make sense. This kind of revelation also gave them a chill because they knew that the things that had already happened made a lot of sense now and that more would come to light in due course. Washi had just entered the mess hall at this point, picked up some food from the chefs, and was searching for a quiet place to eat when he saw the expressions on the faces of his childhood friends and realized that they were still processing what was happening. Without hesitation, he went over to their table, sat down, and observed them. As he finished eating one of the biscuits that had been given to him, the 2 women looked him in the eyes and tried to find the right words to ask him a question. "I can tell that you have a lot of questions to ask me, and from the look upon your faces you're still trying to come to grips with what's going on and why it would be dangerous for me to go back to Konoha," he said, stopping them with his hand. Tenten was still wondering why it was so dangerous for him to return to their hometown and why he believed that there were Templars in their village who held positions of such high authority and wanted it meant for everyone. Both of them were surprised at how quickly he had deduced what was faxing them. "I still don't understand why you are afraid of the elders. Let's just say that they've had a hand in just about all of my suffering in one form or another, and in fact not just mine but quite a few people's as well." Tenten asked, "What do you mean others?" because she was taken aback by the question and response at the same time. "Well, for one I mean the Uchiha clan. Did either of you know that directly after the Nine Tails attack that they were basically corralled into what became known as the Uchiha district?" He noticed the shocked expressions on their faces and realized that this was not a widely accepted fact. But having spent a significant portion of his life with the 3rd Hokage, he was familiar with some aspects of the village that few others even knew existed. What most people are not aware of unless you are a member of the older generation is that there are only 2 clans in the Hidden Leaf that are even capable of controlling the strongest of the Biju. The Uchiha and the Senju, he continued. Being one of the few people who knew about his burden, Tenten was genuinely taken aback when she heard this. "Tsunade's clan?" He replied by nodding his head. To be more precise, Tenten, it was her grandfather. They could do this thanks to his bloodline. But as we all know, she was not present in the village upon that day. Knowing where he was headed, Hinata added, "But the Uchiha clan was." "That's right, and they did everything within their power to try to help me out as much as possible. However, many of their efforts were stopped by the 2 elders and the civilian council." In light of what she had just been told and what she had seen and heard her own father say, Hinata realized with horror that the elders and the council had never concealed the extent of their power and that they did not at all like it when others challenged it. "What you just said makes a terrifyingly plausible sense. My father used to talk about having to battle the elders and the council. In order to protect our own clan, they have been looking for a way to remove my father from his role as clan head, which would give our clan elders unthinkable power and encourage them to take actions that would harm not only our clan but also others." Washi smiled at her and then said, "And the village elders would gain a powerful ally in doing so. Plus do not forget that they and the council were directly responsible for me being removed from the shinobi program in the first place. But what advantage did they receive from removing you from the program, and what could they possibly hope to gain with what they did to the Uchiha clan? Tenten asked him further after he started to see the pieces fit together but was still unable to see the big picture. They both gave him a nod when he asked, "You two do know about the Akatsuki? What you may not know is that the organization is planning within a few months to begin hunting down all of the Jinchuriki for whatever they are planning to do to us. If I had stayed in the village because of what elders had done, I would be weak and unable to defend myself against this extremely dangerous enemy who are as strong as the cages themselves in or capable of causing unimaginable amounts of damage to any village they wish to attack." When Hinata realized the consequences of what the elders were planning, she said, "But the elders could make a deal to hand you over to them and prevent the destruction of the village. But that would mean that they would have to know what was coming, and they are supposed to have so much information when it comes to the military aspect of the village." Tenten was still interested in the Uchiha part, but she now realized why he did not want to go back of the elders and the council had originally pushed for this mission. But how does the Uchiha clan fit into all of this? Because they were planning to take out the civilian and the elders. Remember, they were the primary police force of the village and were tasked with dealing with any kind of internal threats. He instructed them. The expression of revelation appeared on both of their youthful faces once more. Whatever they had on the council and the elders would have been enough to rip away their power, and if that was the case they would have to act. Washi raised his eyebrows and continued, "That's right, they had to act. Think about it, how would Itachi have managed to single-handedly killed off his entire clan, which just so happened to be made up of high-level Jonin and Anbu? And they left Sasuke alive so they could mold him into anything they wanted?" "That's right," he said, nodding his head and pointing to them. But what they were not counting on was him going rogue. With all of this, Hinata could only come up with one answer. "It's all starting to make a creepy kind of sense. It also explains why certain missions have been denied in the past." "Exactly, but it only gets worse over time. As their power grows, so too will their ambitions," Washi replied to them. Tenten then asked, "So what's the difference between you and the Templars?" As Washi finished his meal and gestured for the girls to follow him out of the mess hall while they were still chatting. When they stepped out onto the ship's deck, he turned to face them and said, "From a certain point of view we both seek peace." Hinata questioned him curiously, "A certain point of view?" "Yes, we each seek peace in our own way. For the Templars it is through order and control." His words left them both a little perplexed, so he answered their implicit query by saying, "Seeking order and control isn't a bad thing in itself, but the way they go about it is. For one little we do know, they always seem to have people fighting them," Tenten replied. "Well, they always stole people's freedom. That was how they instituted their control and order. Do as we say, even if your life is shit." Hinata questioned, "And the assassins?" "We seek both freedom and peace. Like good and evil or a perfect sphere, one cannot exist without the other. When freedom is taken from someone, peace can no longer live. That's what the Templars take from people, their freedom, so they can have their control." The wisdom in his words astounded and surprised them. He went on to say, "Freedom and peace can exist even in a place like one of the hidden villages. Even in a place like Konoha that is a dictatorship, there can still be freedom." Their faces were filled with surprise as he continued, "You have to remember the village is supposed to be ruled by the Hokage, not by the civilian council. And the only council supposed to help the Hokage is the Shinobi Council and maybe the elders. Civilians are only supposed to handle civilian matters, have any power in the affairs of Shinobi. How does the civilian council play a part in all this?" was the question Tenten was still attempting to answer. "You have to remember they came to power after the Nine Tails attack on the village. They were the ones who passed for the restrictions on the Uchiha clan and have even been bleeding the clans dry of their funds as well as the manipulation of other things. The civilians are only supposed to tend to the civilian affairs, have no say in the military aspect." Hinata then added her 2 cents. "Because of what they've done to the village is not running as smoothly as it should be, and certain military operations are not as secure as they need to be. I mean, look at the invasion that occurred at the Chunin exams all those years ago. You're right. I always found it so strange that they able to pull that off without any problems, especially when the third increased the security," Tenten stated during self-discovery. Washi continued, "And if no one stands in their way, the last couple of wars will look like a schoolyard brawl in comparison. It's one of the reasons we assassins fight." Tenten then asked, "Is it possible to learn the ways of the assassins?" To his surprise, and Hinata agreed. It is, but it's a choice you will have to make. Can you live with it once you start down this path, because there is no going back? Washi asked, meeting their eyes. Just as the sun was starting to rise over the ocean, Washi had woken up a little earlier and started walking to the ship's bridge. Once inside, he saw his mentor Raven and the girls standing close to the navigation center while Jack and the crew worked feverishly to maneuver the warship into its secret safe port. After admiring the numerous whirlpools that gave his mother's homeland its namesake through one of the bridge's many windows, Washi heard Raven say, "Hard to starboard right now and reduce speed for the turn," with a sailor's strength that made him realize he had a lot more questions for his mentor. As the ship started to turn into the narrow channel that would take them to the ruins of the Whirlpool village, the helmsman said, Aye, sir." Once upon a time, they entered a large lake deep enough for heavy ships to anchor and saw what appeared to be a somewhat intact dock for ships directly ahead of them. After several thrilling turns, bordered by aggressive looking whirlpools that once gave the village and island their name, Jack wasted no time in ordering the ship to dock as soon as possible and started barking orders to his men to get ready for their trip ashore. The two Uzumakis were looking at their ancestral home within 10 minutes, and to their surprise, despite the extensive damage to the area, several of the buildings looked nearly 80% intact. Tenten and Hinata watched with horror and despair as their longtime friend looked at what remained of his ancestral homeland, but they were also filled with a resolve to ensure that no one ever had to experience something similar again. Raven could not contain his tears as he saw the devastation of his homeland, but he refused to let the grief rule him because he knew that there was still hope for saving their homeland. He gestured for the group behind him to follow him as they moved deeper into the ruins and reached what had once been the village's central tower, where the leaders would make decisions. When they arrived at the tower, they saw that it had once been the site of a significant battle, but that a significant portion of it was still standing. Raven approached a wall bearing the assassin's emblem, touched it to activate the hidden single array that opened the adjacent secret passage, and gestured for Washi to approach. "No, you rely too heavily on chakra. This is something only an assassin can do, as there are undoubtedly sails in here designed to stop the use of chakra," Washi said, gesturing for his two friends to stop as he entered the passageway after instantly activating his eagle sense. As they watched him enter the tunnel, they both recognized his perspective. He quickly made his way through the system of tunnels and eventually reached the sanctuary's entrance. When Washi first entered the Soul Sanctuary, he was astounded to see what he could only describe as the ghosts of his ancestors. One of them was obviously William Miles, Desmond's father, and the other was a stunning young woman who was obviously pregnant and whom he knew to be Rebecca. "It's absolutely perfect and we'll be able to put so many things in here, and how is the Animus room coming along?" the spectral Rebecca asked the older man after surveying the room with a joyful expression. He surveyed the area and then stated, "The Animus room should be along shortly, however still take a couple of more years before this place is truly ready to house everything we need, but at least with my son's sacrifice gave us all have a fighting chance, including my grandson or granddaughter. We just started to fall in love to get to know each other when we eventually opened the vault," she said, looking down at her swollen gut that held her unborn child and gently caressing it after hearing him say that. "I really wish I had stopped him from touching that damn orb." He realized that he had just experienced a bloodline effect that was known to happen occasionally depending on the location, and he eventually made his way up to the main entrance and opened the sanctuary to let his companions in. As soon as she said this, the two ghostly images seemed to vanish, leaving him alone once more. "It is an impressive sight, is not?" Raven asked, grinning at Jack, his daughter, the Wreckers, and his two childhood friends, who were amazed by the room they were now in. Its beauty and strength immediately captivated the three Wreckers, who remarked, "You assassins sure know how to build things. From what we can see right here, this place is stronger than it looks." While admiring their ancestors' craftsmanship, Washi and Raven simply grinned at everyone. Suddenly, one of the crew members entered with a worried expression on his face. When the young crew member stopped right in front of Jack, everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to face him. "Catch your breath, boy, what's going on?" Jack asked. "Sir, we've discovered that there appear to be camps of people here in the ruins of the village. It almost looks like the kind of refugee camps we had back in the Land of Water." This information startled Jack, but he soon realized the young man was not finished. "It also appears, sir, that there are hostiles here attacking them right now," Jack said. Tenten and Hinata immediately pursued him after Washi flew past him and up the stairs, leaving the sanctuary without warning, before Jack could even get an order. They had to run on the ground, trying to stay as hidden as possible, and watched him move as if he somehow knew where the people who were hiding within his homeland were. When they finally made it to the surface, they were shocked to see him already flying through the trees and silently, something they could not do even with their incredible abilities. They then started to hear men yelling for help for themselves and their families, only to hear ruthless people laughing. Eventually, they managed to hide and saw an elderly man who must have been the bridge builder trying to protect his daughter and grandson from harm while getting punched in the face. As he said, "You know, old man, your precious bridge is ours now, and soon we'll find out who was responsible for my boss's loss of his brother who had every right to do with you people." As he saw it, the group leader gave him a triumphant yet haughty look. "We may not have the strength to fight you, but it's only a matter of time until someone comes looking for you. Until then you'll never have a moment's rest on this island," the elderly inebriated bridge builder said, glancing up at him. Then, with a sickening grin, he took out a small knife and walked behind a child who was no older than 10. He then plunged the blade straight into the young man's body, causing him excruciating pain that would last until he died from bleeding out without killing him. This was all that Washi had to see while he was still attempting to find a position from which to attack. Without giving anyone any warning, he pulled out one of his rope darts and swiftly let the blade fly, striking one of the murderers in the back. Before anyone could clearly understand what had happened, he was chirped up into the sky while hanging from a rope that was suspended on a branch. They then heard a sound hitting the ground and turned to see a strange black warrior who moved like lightning, slitting the throats of the 4 men closest to him. At least 3 more men quickly engaged him, but were slashed without hesitation. With a look of obvious insanity on his face, the leader swiftly seized one of the hostages and put his knife blade to her throat, believing that the strange warrior in front of him would not engage in combat and endanger the hostage. How foolish he was. Washi raised one arm to reveal his concealed weapon and drew back the hammer. Using his bloodline, he pressed the trigger and fired the bullet. As Akima saw it in the animus, she saw the bullet leave the gun in slow motion and pass directly in front of her face. She saw the Assassin Brotherhood's emblem and their family crest embedded in the bullet's surface. After she had a good look at the bullet, it swiftly accelerated once more, striking the monster who was paraded in human skin squarely in the forehead. The hostage was startled when his eyes rolled in the back of his head and his body went limp, striking the ground. He then hurried to the young boy and tried his best to stop the bleeding. By this time, Hinata and Tenten had hurried to the scene to see if they could assist the young boy. The young boy looked up to see the face of the man who tried to save them and grinned, knowing exactly who it was before any of the others did. Hinata started to scan the boy with her medical jutsu, but was disappointed to learn that the blade had also been poisoned and that there was nothing she could do to save him. Washi smiled at the youngster and then said, "Be strong, young one. God shall wipe away all the tears from your eyes and there shall be no more death. Neither shall there be sorrow or crying. Neither shall there be any more pina, for the former world has passed away." When the young boy finally passed away, Washi closed his eyes and let the tears run down his cheeks. He then turned to face Hinata and Tenten, who also shed tears. Washi realized that the cut had not been deep enough to end his evil life when he heard one of the men he had cut down trying to flee. He stood up straight and walked calmly over to the man who was now laughing at them as though there was nothing they could do to stop them. The man was stopped in his tracks before he could even leave the area when a foot fell directly on his shoulder. He then felt a sharp pain in his chest and turned to see Washi stab him in the chest. It was then that he realized they were in grave danger from someone who would not think twice about killing them. "You know what the difference between us is, Templar? The difference is we live by a creed. We do not harm the innocent. As Udoa, may you find peace and forgive in the next world," the man said, growing even more terrified now that he knew what he was. After the man eventually died, Captain Jack Webb took his foot off the deceased and went to try to assist as many people as he could. When the man turned around, he was shocked to see Naruto. The old bridge builder then turned to face the assassin, who he knew exactly who they were. This particular assassin had fallen, exposing spiky blonde hair. From the tent where the elderly inebriated Tazuna and his family were currently staying, Washi surveyed the encampment. He was genuinely shocked to see so many Wave residents seeking refuge in the remains of the Whirlpool village. The young man who had saved his village from destruction so many years ago was sitting on one of the sleeping cots in the center of the tent. He turned around and walked back there, where Tazuna was now drinking some of his liquor. He was even more shocked to see that the young man in front of him was actually both an assassin and an Uzumaki. I never would have thought that you were one of the Uzumakis or an assassin when I first saw you all those years ago, but seeing you now I realize that you may be this world's only hope if you can bring back the Brotherhood, that is? When the elderly man asked, "You know about my clan and the Brotherhood, how?" Washi was genuinely taken aback. After briefly nursing the drink in his hands and taking a sip, he turned to face Washi and said, "I was a young man when your home village was destroyed all those years ago. We were lucky to be spared. How did you find this place? I'm a bridge builder by trade, but I know how to build houses and buildings as well. I actually helped build some of the things here. I know some of the structures so well, and I also know some of the ways into this particular island from Wave. There was a time when this island was connected to Wave itself, but that was before the event. After that it split in 2.5. We are currently on developed the whirlpools as what gave it its name in the first place," he said, catching the young assassin's inquisitive gaze. "And you never heard my clan name when we were here on that mission, so you would not know, but I have to know, why did you choose the ruins of my village to hide? What has happened?" Washi said, startled by what he had just heard. "Our home is nothing but ruins right now, so are a lot of other people in the village. It turns out that Gato had a brother who decided to take over the island, and I'm sorry to say that unlike Gato, this man is a monster. I don't understand what's so important about Wave," Tenten and Hinata said as they entered the tent at this precise moment. Wave and Whirlpool were known as the waypoint of the Seawashi, between the land of water and the land of spring. "You're saying that this island is sitting right in the middle of the major ocean superpowers. Looking back now, I can see why the Templars were so interested in all three of them." As he entered the tent, Raven interrupted the two girls, who were taken aback by his statement, saying, "It would make a lot of sense, my young student. I can also see why they would be so interested in Wave, as it would be a perfect place for a military harbor." Tazuna then appeared to recall something and replied, "Military harbors. That would explain why there were those materials were here in the first place. They were using those materials to make a military harbor. Now I am so glad I stole the supplies to make the bridge in the first place. No wonder Gato wanted you so dead. I take it that they had people from Land of Water here?" was a statement that shocked Washi. The old bridge builder responded, "Yes, but they left so that Gato could take care of the problem that I was causing during that time. And I take it that the situation is even direr than last time?" asked Washi, who was taken aback by the amount of activity. "You could say that. Well, in that case I am going to need some help. Is she here with you?" Washi responded. "She's in the camp, and I know she will be happy to see you again." "I know I am," Tazuna replied. "Okay, who is she?" his two childhood friends asked, interested in what was being said. After turning to face them, Washi remarked, "Someone who helped me along my path as a shinobi and then as an assassin." The streets of the district, which had been closed off due to the tyranny of the Templars not long ago, were now bustling with people writing about their everyday lives carelessly as Jiraiya, Yugito and the other leaf ninjas strolled through them. They all saw a number of samurai patrolling the area, watching for any signs of trouble. Jiraiya then gestured them to a group of samurai, who immediately bowed to him and signaled for them to follow. They entered a vast area with numerous houses in a matter of minutes. One of the houses was a huge, rather elaborate mansion with what appeared to be multiple makeshift kitchens outside the yard that provided food for the numerous samurai and civilians in the area. A rather ornate-looking samurai greeted them as they approached the mansion's front door and gestured for them to follow him inside. Eventually, they entered a large study where an elderly man was seated in a chair and reading an ancient-looking book with a rather worn leather binding. He said, "It is a true pleasure to see the old spymaster again. I'm to finally meet the assassins I've been hearing so much about, but only one?" As he turned to face them as the group entered the room, he grinned when he saw Jiraiya's face. After rolling his eyes at his longtime friend's perspective, Jiraiya said, "There are several assassins left in the world now, they are no longer fallen." The old man said to him, "Well, that's good to hear, but I assume they're here for a reason?" Taking a seat in one of the room's numerous chairs, Jiraiya explained why they were present at this particular moment. "They're here because they need to know the whole truth behind both the assassins and the Templars, plus unfortunately I have terrible news to tell you." He said, "They killed him, didn't they?" And Jiraiya nodded in agreement. "I have a feeling the old shinobi did not go quietly into the night. Did his research fall into their hands?" Shikamaru then said, "He seemed to know something was going to happen to him. and he gave all of his research to us before they got to him. Thank God, the Templars will do everything in their power to obtain that knowledge." The elderly man expressed relief as he said, "Tell me, how much do you all know about what's really going on?" Since he was still trying to understand what was actually happening, Kakashi was a little perplexed by the question. "It's still a little confusing, but we seem to know a little bit more about the assassins than the Templars," he said. The elderly man questioned him, "Then, have you learned anything about the precursors or the ones who came before?" Shikamaru says, "It's so troublesome, but I have been reading through the material and I find references occasionally to something called the precursors," as the elderly man stitched the expression onto his face. The elderly gentleman looked at him and then replied, "Very good, Nara. My old friend and I are responsible for researching the history of the assassins and the Templars, and I mean the complete history as much as we can, but it's difficult as this story has two sides to it that tell their own tale on their own, but when put together they tell a completely unique tale in its own right." "You're saying that there is more to this tale than just the assassins?" Ino asked, abruptly realizing that there was more to the story they had been told. The elderly gentleman nodded to her and then replied, "Exactly. The tale of the assassins, Templars, and the precursors is like a giant puzzle. Each piece is a small story in the bigger picture, and when put together, even with massive holes, they still tell a rather unique story. However, this is not your typical puzzle, as it is in two pieces that on their own tell their own story, with small pieces that hint at the other story, and when put together tell an even bigger and even more amazing tale. You have only been told one part of that puzzle's story. Your friend was researching the assassins while you were researching the precursors," Shikamaru realized. "Exactly, young men. The truth is we all have seen or heard stories of the ones who came before, or the first civilization as they have been known to some," the elderly man said with a sincere smile and a nod, pointing to Shikamaru. His implied statement, "I've never heard of these stories you're talking about," did not particularly perplex Kurenai. "Of the course you have, my dear young lady. Stories of legends of gods and grand adventures. The old saying, 'All legends have a basis,' in fact, is not just a saying, it's the truth, my dear. For example, take the story of Adam and Eve and the expulsion from paradise, all because of an apple. But the assassins discover the truth that the apple was really a weapon and the human race was nothing more than a slave race created in their master's image," the elderly man continued, leaving the Konoha shinobi and kunoichi in complete disbelief. The old man's words, "What the hell are you talking about? Are you saying we were created to be nothing more than slaves and look like our masters?" caused Ino's eyes to widen. He looked them all in the eyes as he continued, "From what I have been able to piece together, as well as others who have helped me in my work, my young lady, that is exactly what they saw us at first, but some of them fell in love with our people as well. After all, they were the inspiration for the Roman and Greek gods of ancient times." A young woman, no older than 20, entered the room with a tray full of tea for everyone to enjoy and started passing it around before the elderly man could continue. Shikamaru was starting to develop a theory about everything and just needed a little more information before he could express his opinions. "Would anyone like some lemon cake or perhaps some meat pie that is quite fresh?" the young woman who had brought the team asked. "We have quite a bit of food thanks to the blockade being over now and no longer have to ration it as much to feed the people of this district." Everyone was taken aback by the service of the mentor's people. When the old man said to her, "I would like a slice of the lemon cake if it's not too much trouble, my dear," the ninja were taken aback. She looked around the room, nodded her head, and went about her duties after everyone had said they were all okay. The elderly gentleman drank some of his tea and continued. "When the district was sealed off from the rest of the city, we were basically left to starve to death. However, since I was a student of the Uzumaki and their sealing arts, I used those very skills to begin sewing away large amounts of supplies, everything from weapons to food and other supplies, which has been the only thing keeping the people here in this district alive, which, as it turns out, also made my home here quite a tempting target if the daimyo decided to launch an all-out invasion of this district." After being impressed, Yugito suddenly realized something. "That's how you and your friend know so much about the assassins, Templars, and the first civilization?" he asked. "The old ninja and myself were both students of knowledge, but we also decided to apply ourselves in other areas, for him combat training and for myself the art of sealing. We both proved that we could be trusted, much as Jiraiya here. Because of our knowledge and abilities, we were chosen to hunt down this very knowledge and keep it from falling into the hands of the Templars if they were still around, because if they were able to find just one piece of Eden, it could be the end of the world." He asked, "Wait, you said if they got their hands on just one piece of Eden?" Are you actually saying that the Apple of Eden is real? Which piqued Ino's interest. He gave her a nod. Yes, I'm afraid it is very real, and it's not the only one. Their culture was destroyed by the same type of event that happened 500 years ago, but theirs was 10,000 years ago and nearly destroyed their entire culture. Today there are hidden temples and technology which have been found from time to time, and sometimes the Templars have actually got their hands on the pieces of Eden, and the results have been terrifying to say the least. The Templars' conspiracy is more dangerous than anyone can possibly understand unless they are involved, and the Templars are doing everything they can to keep it hidden from the world, Shikamaru said, realizing the gravity of the situation they had been drawn into and the significance of the assassins. That's right, young man, and as much as it pains me to say this to you all, but you are all now witnesses to the greatest cover up in human history. As long as you were ignorant, you were all safe from their wrath, but now they will be keeping an eye on you all and may decide to just eliminate you. Kiba was hearing things that he couldn't believe. That's bullshit, and they would never be able to get away with that. Shino, on the other hand, looked at his colleague and replied, I'm afraid to say that it's not Kiba. If anything, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. My clan as well as Shikamaru's have always suspected that there was something more to the Uzumaki clan than anyone could have ever realized, and that when they were supposedly wiped out, the balance in the world changed dramatically. Kiba. Then Shikamaru continued, for the bug user, Shino's right, Kiba. After the Uzumaki clan was killed off, those in Konoha who suspected the truth of the assassins noticed they seemed to vanish from the world, and with their departure from the world, many nations within a decade suddenly began to either destroy themselves or become dangerous military powers that helped spark the last great ninja war that all of our parents fought in before we were all born. And even after that, within our lifetimes, many other nations have begun to become corrupt or controlled by foreign forces, and let us not forget the increase in the activity around the Jincha, Riki, and even the attack on our village by the nine-tailed fox. To everyone's disbelief, it was Kakashi who spoke. They're all right. It's as if the attack by the fox was planned to either destroy our village or to weaken it so we could not be a threat in the future. What they weren't counting on was us to begin to rebuild our village and forces so fast, and for the Uchiha to do everything in their power to protect Naruto. It's all starting to make even more sense, since I'm one of the few people who knows that it was the two elders and not Danzo who ordered the execution of the clan and even provided the evidence that eventually doomed them. Ino was now taken aback when she discovered, so both Naruto and Sasuke were nothing more than pieces in their twisted game for one reason or another, but they changed everything, and now you're saying we have a chance to write our own new destiny. The elderly gentleman nodded. Unto that, you're absolutely right, young lady. I've heard the stories of how young Uzumaki, not even an assassin yet, and he still managed to do the impossible or inspire people to change their lives. Was in that respect alone, he has been a major thorn in their sides, in their plans. Now that he is an assassin, have even more to fear, and yet they still need him alive for whatever new plan they have, and that right now is one of their greatest weaknesses. Tenten and Naruto Hinata strolled through the camp on their way to what the lost people of Wave called the medical tent. The two young girls wanted to know who their childhood friend or brother figure was so desperate to meet and why. A young woman not much older than them was caring for many of the injured citizens from the previous attack, so she was too busy to notice the newcomers. As soon as he stepped inside the tent, he made sure his hood was lowered so that everyone could see his face. It's good to see you again, Haku.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.